So after I did my video series Android versus iOS, a lot of you were asking why I like the iPad so much. I had just spent over an hour explaining how awesome Android really is. I'm going to take two tablets, the Transformer Prime and the iPad, and I'm going to give you my honest opinion and show their strength and weaknesses. Let's get started. Before I bought my iPad 2, and of course now owning the new iPad, I had bought two Android tablets before. The first being the Samsung Galaxy Tab, which is actually the first Android tablet, and then the Galaxy Tab 10.1. I don't want to go into full detail as why I wasn't pleased with them, but I will mention some points here as part of Android's downfall and why I think the iPad is still king of the tablet industry. I'm not going to do an unboxing or talk about specs. You guys can Google that information, or some of you already know that. I will show you the good, the bad, and the ugly on each device. I decided to use the Transformer Prime TF300. I believe it's the best Android tablet for your money. It's priced right under $400 for the 16GB model. You can easily purchase the dock and be on par with the price of a new iPad. And let me tell you, the dock is awesome and is a huge selling point. Other manufacturers have attempted to make a keyboard dock for the iPad. However, the biggest downfall is that they're trying to shoehorn something that wasn't made to have a dock in the first place. Sure, some might look cool, but they fail in the functionality that the Transformer Prime has. An example is the dedicated trackpad with multi-touch gestures. It has a familiar feel to, say, a laptop. You also get a nice pointer like a desktop computer, which is very nice. The keyboard also has shortcuts which make it easier to navigate, and it actually complements the OS very well. The fact that the keyboard also charges the tablet and gives it more use time is a huge bonus. On the other hand, you have the iPad, which takes about 8 hours for a full charge. When you're on the go, this can be a bad thing. I was able to charge the Transformer with dock together in under 3.5 hours, which essentially would give me over 14 hours of use. Let's talk about how both devices feel. I don't know what it is about the new iPad, but it feels off. Even though it is slightly heavier, you can definitely feel it. Something about the iPad 2 that just felt right. Maybe it was a weight distribution. That has been my biggest turnoff since upgrading. Now the TF300 is the baby of the original Prime that had the beautiful metal back. It really feels good in the hands. The weight is much better distributed, and even though this model is plastic, it doesn't feel or look cheap. As I stated before, the Transformer is priced right. The fact that it also has expandable storage is a bonus. I was shocked when I got my new iPad and downloaded all my original apps, and I actually ran out of space. I had to delete apps from my iPad. I believe that the Retina display takes 5 times more space, and frankly the 16GB is a waste, especially since you don't have an SD card for additional storage. I'm not sure why Apple is still making a 16GB model. Frankly, they should have just killed it off and had the 32 by default, and they should have had a 128GB option. I think the sad thing is that a 32GB, you're already spending $600, but for $100 more, you can double your memory to 64GB, and you almost feel forced to buy the 64GB because it's a better value, but now you're at $700 plus tax. This is kind of looking ugly. As far as the operating systems go, ASUS is running Android and the iPad iOS. The customization on Android is phenomenal. You can really make it your own. You guys clearly know how I feel about that. If you haven't seen my Android versus iOS video, then you should watch it after this. The notification system really shines on Android, and it's much different from the phone version. You can clearly see Apple recycle their notification from the iPhone to the iPad, and that huge gap seems odd to have. Seems like wasted space to me. A plus with buying an Android tablet is if you don't necessarily like the Transformer, there are plenty of choices of Android tablets to choose from. Unlike Apple with the iPad, it's a one-size-fits-all solution. You're probably asking yourself, wait, I thought you liked the iPad. You're sounding like an Android fanboy. Did I change my mind after using the Transformer? Because after everything that I showed you guys, I bet you guys are thinking, I'm ready to just go out and buy a Transformer Prime. This thing is awesome. Well, this is where things change. But despite the fact that the iPad does not have a keyboard dock, lacks the customization of Android, and frankly, it's a bit boring. I mean, let's face it, the interface hasn't changed since 2007, since the iPhone came out. There are several things that it does right and make a huge difference, enough to keep me as a customer. Apple has done a great job on how things work with the iPad. For example, let's take web browsing. I would say that's one of the top things that everyone uses a tablet for. Let's take a look at how Android works while browsing the web. I will take the same website and load it on the iPad. Can you see a difference? Despite the fact that the new iPad has a much higher resolution, it's showing less than the Transformer. The Transformer is showing the exact 1280 by 720 resolution, while the iPad is showing less, but everything is legible. With Android, I would have to zoom in closer to read the text, and when I do that, the website isn't scaled properly anymore. Now I have missing elements, images, text on each side. With the iPad, that's not the case. Despite having a higher resolution, it keeps everything proportioned. If the Transformer had a higher resolution like the iPad, then everything would look small. Let me give you an example of what I mean using my monitor. My monitor has a resolution of 1920 by 1200, which is actually lower than the new iPad. However, I can see way more on my monitor than I can with my iPad. That's because Apple automatically scales everything to work something like this. Pay attention to my monitor. If you notice, I'm zooming in more so I can see it better. This is what the iPad does, but automatically. It's also the way the iPad handles high DPI. Now in the case of my monitor, since it's much larger than the iPad, I can have it zoomed out more and it would be okay. But that's not all. The browsing experience on the iPad is much more fluid. Pinch to zoom works instantaneously. Scrolling is almost perfect. Even with the Transformer docked, I was hoping for a smoother experience using the trackpad. That was not the case. It actually got worse and the response was poor and jittery, which almost defeats the purpose of having such an awesome dock. Another big disappointment while web browsing on Android is that most popular websites are actually optimized for the iPad. These websites have gesture-enabled feedback and enhance the user experience. On Android, in most cases, you are prompt to the mobile site, which ruins the experience. I mean, sure, you can change the user agent to desktop or iPad, but things don't work the same. The feedback is not the same, and it feels like you're getting a watered-down version of the web. Like this navigation example. When I click on the navigation on the iPad, it opens up like it should. With Android, it loads the link and a new page opens up. These little annoying things start to get to you and really ruin the experience. But the biggest reason why Apple's iPad is still king of tablets is its applications. As much as I want to love Android and its tablets, the lack of support on apps is a deal breaker. Many apps have not made it to tablet form, and the ones that have made it are frankly garbage. And the sad thing is that they have not been optimized for tablets, even though they say they are. Let's take for example Zinio, a magazine app. Despite the Tegra 3 processor, while swiping to load each page, in some cases can take up to 5 seconds to render a page, leaving you with a blurry image. This is not the case with the iPad, and when you pinch to zoom, the exact same thing happens. I can tell you, when reading a magazine and having a blurry screen, the effect on your eyes is terrible. The sad part is that this app is actually Tegra optimized, which means that it should perform even better, but it doesn't. Another big plus is you can't deny Apple's Retina display. Looking at the same page without zooming, you can see on the Transformer the text is very hard to read and blurry, pixelated. On the iPad, even zoomed out all the way, you can clearly make out the text and everything is so sharp and crisp. Another example of a poorly optimized app is Teamviewer. This is an app I use to remotely control my desktop. When using it on the iPad, it feels natural and things work so nice and smooth. However, trying it on the Transformer is a pain. Things move slow, it's a bit jittery, and you can't even use the dock, which would have been very nice, especially while controlling a Windows or Mac computer.
But even popular apps like Yelp, Twitter, eBay, Facebook, Netflix, and DirecTV are all mobile versions or haven't been optimized for tablets like they are on the iPad. They have terrible lag. You are left with only a handful of good apps, but not enough to convince me to make the switch. Even popular apps like Flipboard on iOS haven't made the jump to Android. This app alone is worth buying an iPad for the avid reader. Flipboard was 15% of the reason why I bought the iPad. Now I know Flipboard is coming soon to Android. I actually downloaded a leaked version, but it's still a waiting game. You also have to worry if it will be as good as the iOS version on the tablet at least. It is very similar on the phone, but like you've seen with the other apps like Zinio, Teamviewer, Netflix, and many others, they lack quite a bit. This lack of development has really put Android to a halt when it comes to the tablet market. And as much as I love the freedom and customization of Android, without quality apps, which is what makes a device, you really have nothing.
So is the iPad the best tablet? Far from it. Android has the OS to be the best tablet, but developers need to support it more. The lack of integration is what's really keeping Android from shining. The problem isn't so much on Android's operating system, but the lack of quality apps and web optimization. This is a huge turnoff and has steered me away and kept me loyal to Apple. Hopefully soon, developers will see how much traction Android has in the mobile space and start developing more. You see, when I'm on my tablet, I don't really care about the customization that I have like I do with my phone. I don't need custom ringtones. I don't need to push something from my cell phone onto my web browser. I don't need to use turn-by-turn directions. I don't need to be able to turn off GPS, Bluetooth, with the notification. I don't need all that. I need a tablet that I can browse the web fast. I need an awesome user experience. I need something that's optimized for my device. I need apps that work really fast, and can provide a pleasant experience. If Android did those things right, there wouldn't be a challenge. And hands down, Android would win. But this isn't about winning or losing. It's about buying a tablet that works for you. Guys, let me know your opinion. Let me know what you think down below. A lot of you have been asking me tons of questions. I've been getting emails, a lot of private messages. The best way to reach me is through Google+. I've left the link below so that it's a lot easier for me to talk to you guys that way. Anyhow, thanks for subscribing. I hope you guys liked the video, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks a lot.